Hello, thank you for joining this session on business continuity and disaster recovery. Possibly not the happiest meeting title in your calendar, but don't worry because we're going to talk about how we're going to get through them, and it's going to be really positive, so don't be disheartened. It's really good to see so many of you here. I appreciate your time. We're going to get started straight away so we can keep to the hour, and I'm going to switch off my camera because my face, trust me, adds nothing to this experience. A couple of bits of housekeeping we can get out of the way before we crack on. Please use the Q&A box. Anything comes to mind at all, shove it in there and I'll leave some time at the end to go over any questions you've got. If you do what I always do and think of a question about 10 minutes after we finish, that's absolutely fine. I'll share my contact details at the end of the presentation, and you're more than welcome to get in touch. Ping me a note with any questions later. But if anything does come to mind while we're talking this morning, shove them in that chat box and I'll answer them at the end. Also, this is possibly one of the most important things to take away. This is a framework. They are guiding principles, but the real value is in adapting them to suit. What loads of people hate about compliance, and people say to me all the time, compliance is one of these things that takes up so much time, so much of it seems pointless or not relevant to me. It's a box ticking exercise and I get nothing back. That is terrible compliance if that's the case, and not a criticism of the people who have been lumbered with it, but in the people who haven't really helped them out along the way. Compliance is supposed to just live under the surface, almost unseen, make your life so much easier by a lot of things happening in the background, giving you the visibility and the peace of mind that I'm sure that we would all enjoy. So everything I'm going to say can be tweaked to suit you, and moreover, you should tweak it. And if you want any help in tweaking it, that is exactly the sort of thing that we love to do. So please come at this with the expectation that these high-level principles are very, very adaptable. And that leads me just to mention quickly ISO 22301. If you have or you're considering getting the business continuity ISO standard, everything we're going to talk about this morning is completely in line with that certification. So no worries there. If you follow through the steps that I'm going to talk through this morning, it'll put you actually in a really good position for your certification. However, if you're not interested in it, you've never heard of it, you've got no particular desire to gain a certification in ISO 22301, that is also fine. It's not a prerequisite or a requirement. I am not here to persuade or dissuade you one way or the other regards ISO. We don't offer certification. If you are ISO certified, you will obviously know that you're audited once a year by your certification body. You may not know that they are not allowed to offer you any consultancy advice because that creates a conflict of interest for them when they come to audit you. Their regulatory body does not allow it. It's a very strict rule. So where we come in, part of our job is to work with businesses who have ISO certifications to make them as valuable and flexible as possible. And also we work with plenty of businesses who don't have ISO certification and aren't really interested in it, but would really benefit nevertheless from some guiding principles, some frameworks. So whether you are pro or totally disinterested in ISO 22301, there should hopefully be plenty in this morning that you'll be able to take away and use practically, and it will really help you. Leads me to introduce myself. I'm Simon. I'm one of the consultants here at Tesseract. I look after the areas under the envelope of operational excellence, quality, information security, business continuity, and environmental standards. My partner looks after areas relating to personal development, people development, and team development and leadership. So between us, we've got quite a broad range of experience, and together we work with our clients to help them make their businesses easier to run. And we often do that through the lens of compliance. Instead of making that an onerous task, actually making something that runs itself in the background and actually produces time for you gives visibility and makes everything a whole lot simpler and smoother rather than the other way around, which it can often be. And our pillars, when we come to work with clients, we work very hard to make sure the solutions that we bring are completely relevant, and that's what I mean when I say we adapt it and take the principles and the framework and really make them make sense. We make them elegant because some of the things we need to help our clients with can be really complex. So it would be unfair to say that it's simple, but we take those complexities and we apply them in a way that produces a real impact with minimal fuss, and most importantly, worthwhile. That the time that you invest in working with us will give you real benefits to your business and make it a whole lot smoother and simpler to run, whether it's in one small way over a very specific focused project or something much bigger and more general. So let's get into it. Business continuity. It's a term that you may well have heard before and just might not be able to put your finger on exactly what that means, or you might know very well what it refers to. But business continuity is a very specific thing, and it is simply an event. A business continuity event is one which threatens the delivery of your time or mission critical tasks. It's not something that's just a bit annoying or a bit disruptive. It's something that is really, really very serious. And if you are running a business and you've been running a business for the last couple of years, you are probably something of an expert in business continuity already, because we've had a lot thrown at us. So your annual return for this year that shows you're still trading is possibly a good enough business continuity certificate for you. But if you haven't had a business continuity plan or strategy, then it's quite possibly it's been very stressful for you. Unfortunately, things will never be smooth and simple when you're running a business. There are always going to be threats, occasionally huge threats, and the discipline of business continuity is one which makes it as easy as possible for you as business leaders to steer the ship and get through it and through to the other side without losing more hair than is necessary, and actually to give you a bit of peace of mind that everything is going to be okay. So I've broken this down into 6 key steps. First, we analyse the business and understand what's important. We plan what to do in the event of a business continuity incident. When the storm comes, we ride it out and react. We then look to recover as best we can, review how it went, and then finally we have a rehearsal element to make sure that we remain prepared. We'll talk through each of these in a little bit of detail, and then once we come to the other side of that, you will have a really firm understanding of business continuity principles and some real actionable things you can take away and implement. So, business impact analysis. As a business leader, as you will know, I'm sure from the last few years, when something goes wrong, your role is to be a sea of tranquility and be calm, tell everybody it's going to be okay, let's not panic. So the business impact analysis is your opportunity to unleash your inner diva and actually indulge yourself in thinking about what is the worst that could happen. You'll love it. Have fun with it. So what we don't want to do is get too bogged down into scenarios at this stage. We're seeing a lot in the news, for example, about blackouts over winter. We don't need to specifically plan for those blackouts because for most businesses, it's unlikely that is going to have a significantly different impact than a random power cut at any other time of the year. So instead, we think about it from the other angle, the completely opposite direction. What do you need to run your business? Make a list of all of the assets, all of the resources, all of the tangible things that you and your teams need to be able to access in order to just carry out your day-to-day mission critical stuff. And then ask yourself for each, what is the worst thing that could happen if this suddenly became unavailable? And that's your business impact analysis. Now, I've got templates for this and for everything we're going to talk about, so you're welcome to those. But for each one, what is it? What is the resource? What is the asset? What system is it that you need to access every day? And how important is it? And you can use a scale, high, medium, low. It's absolutely fine. It's just some sort of subjective marking or grading of how significant it is to you. And then you want to actually write down the impact of it becoming unavailable, and do go to the worst case scenario. If it's your payroll system on payday, for example, think about the worst time, your busiest time, peak trading, when it goes down, and what that means for your business. And you should think about it at least from an operational perspective and a financial perspective. So have two columns on your business impact analysis, and in one, what is the operational impact of that becoming unavailable? What is the knock-on effect on process? What can you not do as a result of this not being available to you? And the financial impact, and make that broad, all of the financial impact. Put a number on it if you can, or just think about what you'd need to pay for, the cost of repair, the cost of getting in a kind of interim supplier or agency staff, the cost that you might incur by statutory fees if you can't make deadlines and you get fines, all of the financial consequences of this not being available. And depending on your business and what's important to you, you might want to break this out even further into additional impact areas. So you might want to think about, for example, what is the environmental impact of this becoming unavailable, or what is the impact on our technology, or other areas specifically that you maybe want to think about in isolation. But for everybody, I think operational impact and financial impact would have to be the absolute starting point. And now I'm now going to introduce you to a couple of bits of jargon. I'm going to try and keep this jargon light, but it's worth being aware of these terms because they're understood in the business continuity discipline. So it's well worth using them so that people who are familiar with business continuity know what you mean. And the first is the maximum tolerable period of disruption. So for each of these things, what is your MTPD? And that is, as it says here, the maximum amount of time the asset can be unavailable before the impact is unacceptable. So if you think about a bank, if they're thinking about how long can our banking app be down for, if it's unavailable for 5 minutes, they may get a couple of grumbles, but nothing more. If it's unavailable for a full day, that could really actually be dangerous for them. They could face massive fines. They might see people moving banks. So how long can something be unavailable before it really becomes unacceptable to you? And then beneath that, you want your recovery time objective. That is the target for how quickly you want it restored, back online, replacement office, whatever it is. In all cases, that must be under your MTPD. So the bank, they can only be down, let's say, for argument's sake, we cannot have our banking app unavailable for longer than a day. So how quickly do we want it back up? Your deadline's 3 hours. And that, if we don't make that deadline, and it takes us 4, we're still well within that maximum tolerable period. We just do not want to go over that. And then recovery point objective is how much data can be lost. We don't want to lose any data, of course, but if we're in a situation where we need to do a backup, something's corrupted or crashed, and we need to restore the most recent backup, how long ago is it acceptable for that backup to have been taken? It might be you do one backup of all of your key company documents a day, which means your recovery point objective is it's got to be within the last 24 hours. You might find that unacceptable. There might be things that you want updated within the last 5 seconds. And that's doable, but that means you need to be taking backups. Electronically, I'd imagine, you have a full-time backup taker because you would need one, but you would be taking backups every 5 minutes, and that is very expensive. So there's a trade-off here about how much information you can afford to lose and how much backing up you can afford to do. But together, these three bits of information are so important. How long can it be gone for? How quickly do we need to get it back, which must be sooner? And how much data can be lost if we need to do a backup, taking into account the more frequent the backups, the more expensive that gets, and very quickly. So just as an example, Tesseract, we've got a client portal. It's the front end our clients use to give us instructions, see the progress of their projects, access files, etc. It's also the back end that we use internally for our CRM, billing, all sorts of things. So it's great, super convenient for everybody. We love it, clients love it, everything's in one place. It's magical. Until the day, of course, that it stops working, and then we literally can't do anything. So this is illustrative, but if we were to say, well, look, we can't have it gone for more than 2 days, they might forgive us a day or a day and a half or something, but beyond that, they're really going to get concerned about our credibility here. We're going to be flying blind for too long. Then we would say, well, if it goes down 3 hours, we need to get it back. And recovery point objective, because it's so important, because it's constantly being updated, anything more than an hour since the last backup, and we've lost too much information. And this will be different for every single resource in your business. So you go through them line by line, and it's good to do it with a few other people, particularly people that have maybe different roles, so you can get good perspectives and make this really valuable, because it's going to be used later on. When you're thinking about your assets, it's worth breaking them down into categories, and this is just for your convenience to help you to think about everything that you might need to take into consideration. So think about information, literally the data that you need at your fingertips, the things you need to know operationally, financially, employee, vendor, client, all the kind of different data points that you need to touch. Think about your partners and suppliers. Depending on your business, you might want to split that out into suppliers of goods and maybe utilities, and have utilities as a separate section with your electricity, telephone lines, internet, etc. Technology as well. If you are working in manufacture, you've got machinery, you might find that you've got equipment, kit, that if it breaks down, you can't do anything. And I've put those three together because for us, possibly for you, the UK is a very service-focused country when it comes to business. A lot of us are in the service industry. You might find huge overlap between those areas. So, for example, your accounting software stops working. That is both information, because it is your financial information. It is likely supplied by a third party because it's going to be Sage or Xero or QuickBooks or somebody like that. And it's technology because it's their system that's unavailable. Don't replicate it. Don't have the same thing on 3 different rows with the same information under a different category. And it doesn't really matter, to be honest, what category you choose. This is just to help you organize it a bit. So pick the one that seems most intuitive to you, or change the categories, adapt them to make them work for you. You also need to think about things like premises, your office, and people. Are you going to be in a business continuity incident if you lose a certain percentage of your staff, or a certain percentage of staff in a department or a role? So that is just as important, obviously, as the systems that they use, because a system with nobody to operate it is just as dangerous. Once you've got your business impact analysis sorted, we then put together a business continuity plan. So for each resource that you have identified as being important, that for any length of time, if it becomes unavailable, it makes it really difficult to perform your mission or time critical tasks, then you need a business continuity plan. If it stops working, what are you going to do? Before we get into the specifics, I just want to be clear on what I'm referring to. Business continuity is continuing the business during an incident. It is distinct, it is different from a disaster recovery plan. And some people use these terms interchangeably, and that is wrong. So business continuity is something's happened, something important to us is not available or has disrupted us significantly. Business continuity is how we keep performing the most important tasks. Keep the lights on, unless it's a power cut. Keep the processes running. Do the things that are essential for us to continue trading until this is resolved. Disaster recovery plan is the resolving of it. It's the getting the system back online. And you're quite possibly going to have different people dealing with these elements. You might have somebody operational dealing with business continuity, somebody more in your tech team dealing with disaster recovery planning. You might even have a lot of the disaster recovery being performed by your suppliers, if they are the ones who are providing you with the thing that's become unavailable. And we'll touch on what you need to do in that case. But for now, we're talking about business continuity plan. And the exam question is, this isn't available, what do we do? How do we keep going? So, although I say business continuity plan, I actually mean business continuity plans, because you will have a plan for each one of the things on your business impact assessment that you want to talk about. So, for each of those plans, for each individual item that may become unavailable, you're going to want the following. Your activation criteria. When does it become a business continuity incident? If it's the bank and the app glitches for 5 seconds, they're probably not going to invoke business continuity arrangements if it's just 5 minutes and it needs a refresh. But they might do it if it's been down for half an hour. So think about at what point you want to invoke it and make it specific, because the last thing you want is, in the event something happens, you're losing a lot of time with people saying, is this a business continuity event? Is it not? Am I overreacting? Am I underreacting? So just make it clear. If it's unavailable for half an hour, whatever it is, we invoke business continuity planning. If it comes back, we can stand the plan down. Your incident coordinator. It's important to have one person running the incident. You don't want 5 people raising tickets and duplicating effort, because at worst it's going to be confusing and a waste of effort, and it could possibly even just lead to total carnage. So one person, and that can either be a role that you define in the plan, it could be the head of is responsible, or it might be that you say the incident coordinator will be nominated amongst this pool of people on the day. That's fine too, as long as there's a way of identifying who is going to be responsible for this. Then you set out your incident response steps. Really important, really specific. So this is the actual plan. This is the real meat of the plan. Thing is not available, do this, and be super specific. So if you need to raise a ticket to an organisation that you maybe don't raise tickets with very often, say raise a ticket to this email address, this is our account number if they ask for it. If there's a password for a backup, then make sure that everybody who has the password is listed and it's not just one person who's off on holiday. Where do you even find the backup? So you don't want to be scrambling around trying to figure this out. Make it really, really specific. And it might be broken down into time stamps as well. So if it's unavailable for half an hour, these are the actions we take. If it's still unavailable after 2 hours, then these additional actions kick in. So you can have it in a bit of a gradient. It's useful to set out your priorities as well. So if it's a system and it's unavailable and you're working off a spreadsheet instead, maybe it's going to be much more manual, labour intensive. It's going to take you longer to do things. So make it clear the priorities, the tasks that we do, 1, 2, 3. If time allows, then we can do 4, 5, 6. Or maybe you just say task 1 and 2 are the priority. Tasks 3, 4, 5, 6 are deprioritised and are suspended until business continuity event is over. So maybe you can't do everything you would normally do. Make it clear to everybody what the expectation is. And communication, possibly the most important thing on the slide. Who's going to communicate? What are they going to communicate? When are they going to communicate? How are they going to communicate? Is it an email? Is it a phone call? If it's a phone call, are you phoning everybody, or are you phoning your direct reports and they phone their direct reports, etc., etc.? Do you give an update every half hour? Maybe it depends. Maybe if the phone lines are down and the phone line provider says the next update is going to be at 7 o'clock, then that's what you set the expectation to be. And so your business continuity plan would be, we set the expectation according to the supplier's information. Because what you don't want your business continuity incident coordinator to be bombarded with throughout the day are requests for an update. So this is the situation, this is the plan, and the next update is in 3 hours, or tomorrow, or next week, or whenever. And then people should back off. Again, we want to break this down into key areas, similarly to how we did with the business impact analysis. These are suggestions. Again, feel free to adapt them to make them work. Critical system. If a critical system is unavailable, these are the various plans. If a key location is unavailable, these are the various plans. A key supplier, and again, like I mentioned, there could be overlap between critical system and key supplier. But think about as well, we're heading into a recession. If you're being serviced by small, medium businesses, what if your key supplier goes bust? We don't want to think about it, and obviously we hope that doesn't happen, but unfortunately it does happen. So if one of your key suppliers has got crucial information that you need and they go about business tomorrow, do you have an escrow arrangement to get it back? Do you have backups that you can feed into an alternative system? So think as well about the long-term loss of a key supplier as well as an interruption where they're just saying, this is down, we're working on it. And then the less tangible things, reputation. If you're in the middle of a PR nightmare, what's the plan? Who's going to resolve this? Have you got an agency that you speak to, or do you deal with it in-house? Do you try to reach out to people? Do you put out a statement? Do you just weather it? So what's your plan in the event of reputational damage? And public health. So obviously in recent memory, we've seen the impact of one public health event on businesses and the disruption that caused. Hopefully we've all learned lessons from that, both how we can operate more efficiently, how we can be ready for it. But think again, if there's another event, what would be the impact now? Don't assume because we got through one, we'll get through another. Maybe your staff are working from home more. If there was a public health incident and somebody became seriously ill at home, or multiple people became seriously ill at home, and you weren't seeing them in the office and they were working from home, would you know that people were ill? Possibly, without them checking in. And like I say, and I make no apology for repeating this because it's fundamental, adapt these to suit you. So a few years ago I worked at an office opposite Glasgow Airport, and we had contingency plans for what would happen in the event of a terrorist attack. And the counter-terrorism unit came in and they gave us training and they told us what to do if there was some sort of terrorist event right outside. I'm working from home now predominantly, to the best of my knowledge. I'm not a terror target. Egg on my face if it turns out I am and I've not got a business continuity plan for it. So that's probably less of a concern now. But 2 years ago I was working with an American company and we were doing some really time sensitive stuff, super critical time sensitive stuff on site that was going to coincide with the election. Months after the January 6th insurrection, and civil unrest was a real concern at the time. It would have genuinely caused us problems, so we needed to plan for that, and people not being able to come in, and potential damage and vandalism to the property. Last year, working in Glasgow, I was working with a company right next to one of the big energy providers, and we were taking briefings from the police on what would happen in the event of vandalism and civil unrest during the COP26 conference. So make it relevant to where you are, both physically and in your industry, and think about the categories of event that might be worth pursuing. In addition to all of these individual plans for every eventuality, you also want to think about some of these areas on a higher level. And this is probably something you would document just once. So what are your objectives, your business continuity objectives? And this is different from the priorities we mentioned. The objectives of your business continuity planning and your strategy and approach are going to be what you most want to defend, preserve, and protect. So I can guarantee for everybody on this call, the first thing, your statutory and your solemn duty as a business leader, your first objective in a business continuity event is the protection of life, the preservation of life. If it's a fire or some sort of physical incident, your first priority is the health and well-being of your staff and the people in your office. Then, in descending order, you'll list everything else. Your physical infrastructure, your client confidence. It might be specific things about your clients or your employees that you would want to prioritise above all else. So figure out what you want that hierarchy to look like, because that will really help you when you go to plan the specifics. What are your critical activities? And that is, as a business, what are the fundamental things you need to be able to do to stay in business? And those are the things that will become your priorities in the individual business continuity plans. The minimum resources you need in terms of equipment, in terms of staff, percentages or headcounts, whatever you want to work from, what do you need as a minimum viable offering to proceed? And then set out roles and responsibilities for business continuity generally. Who has the authority to activate and deactivate the plan? You probably don't want everybody in the business with the privilege to declare a business continuity incident. You would want them to tell you if something happened so that you could declare it, but decide who has the authority to stand it up and step it down. Who can allocate resources if they are scarce? Who's going to be speaking with authorities, the fire brigade, the council, the police? Who's going to be issuing statements to the press and making external comment? You may wish to suspend policies in some situations. So I've worked in the past in a situation where people have had to start using their own devices unexpectedly. So we had to suspend some of the information security policies around mobile device management and similar. Who's got the authority to do that in your business? Similarly with purchasing and procurement, think about COVID-19. If you were all working from desktops and lockdown was declared and someone had to run off to John Lewis with a credit card to buy a bunch of laptops, who in the business can authorise that if it's different from how you would normally buy stuff? Fire wardens and first aiders, you may want to list them in your plan, you may want to signpost them somewhere else. Other things you may want to think about, who has credit or debit cards in your business? People might not know that, but it's worth having them. And having contact details for key people. I'm talking email address and phone number, at least 2 forms of contact. Don't bother just putting an email address if the business continuity event is your email system's dud. Depending on the size of your business, you might also want to think about alternates for all of these people. And when I say all of these people, this could be one person. This could be 2 or 3 people, depending on your scale and your structure. But if something happens and you're on holiday, which will, that's the way the world works, sod's law, who can you step up and make these decisions? So have alternates, I would suggest, for as many of these things as you possibly can. I want to quickly mention cybersecurity versus business continuity. You may well have a cybersecurity incident which is not a business continuity incident. Someone hacks into the corporate Domino's accounts and orders some pizza. Obviously, you've got to deal with that. Deal with the password leak, deal with all that kind of stuff, but it's not going to, you're not going to shut down over it. Equally, there are business continuity incidents that will not be related, so, the office goes on fire. However, there is this awful overlap where it is both a cybersecurity and a business continuity incident, whether that is information, really sensitive information is leaked, the secret recipe for Iron Brew is out there, or you have client information that has been compromised that's going to really harm your reputation or have massive financial implications. You may lose clients over it. So there's a horrible area where it is both a cybersecurity and business continuity incident. The reason I mention this is because you must treat a cybersecurity incident in a certain way. There's a completely different response plan for something which is a cybersecurity incident. It involves things that you'll need to consider internally from a business perspective, and there are things that you would need to do legally and from a statutory basis as a director of a company, as the data protection officer. There are reports you need to make. You may need to involve the police. There are lots of different considerations, things that you do during and after a cybersecurity attack that are not covered in business continuity. So I would hate for you to go away and deal with any future cybersecurity incident purely as a business continuity incident, because that will not be sufficient. Please don't do that. If you end up in the position where it is both, then what you would do is run both plans. You would run both your cybersecurity response plan and your business continuity plan in tandem. And it may be separate people that do that. It might be the same person depending on the structure of your business, and in that case you can do your best to align those to be non-duplicated. Do you know what I mean? I can't speak. I need a cup of tea. So it's really important that you understand the difference. We don't have time to get into cybersecurity response planning in this session, but if that is something that you don't have, I would really recommend that you look into it. Unfortunately, it's an area that just continues to prove a greater and greater threat to all of us. These attacks get more sophisticated and more numerous, and I would strongly encourage you to develop one. If you don't have one, you're more than welcome to get in touch with me and we can chat about it if you need some help. So then the day comes, a disaster happens, and your first thought is, yippee, I can use my shiny new business continuity plan. I've been waiting for this moment. It's quite self-explanatory. You follow the plan. You've done all the thinking, you've got it all written down, it's all very precise, you just follow the plan. And you remain in business continuity mode, following the plan, until normal service is resumed. Couple of things. Sounds obvious, but make sure it's accessible. If your business continuity plan only lives on the intranet, and then your intranet goes down, you're going to struggle to follow the plan for it. So I would strongly recommend, and this is, I'm expecting a sharp intake of breath from anybody that's 9001 accredited. I would strongly recommend a paper copy. And before you log off and think I'm insane, there are certain documents that you should have physical copies of. Now, having said that, you need to control it. You'll need to have a list of who gets a paper copy, the date they last received it. You'll need a process when there's an update to make sure that they get a new copy and the old copy is destroyed. Make sure that they are appropriately stored, etc. So it's not just a free-for-all, but it's important to have it. We've got red folders, I call them battle boxes. It's only got a few, maybe 6 documents in it. One of them is the business continuity plan, because assume there's no internet, assume there's no electricity, assume there's no access to our system, we need a way to refer to this information, and unfortunately it's the only option. Also make sure everybody knows about it, because if it's available and accessible but no one has a clue that you've done it, then all your work is for nothing. So make sure people know what it is, where it is, when they use it. Have one contact point. Again, so important, because you want to make sure that all of the liaison internally and with third parties if necessary is going through one central organizer. and contingency work instructions. So if you have to work in a different way, make sure you've documented what that looks like. It's important. And you may be groaning and thinking, oh, you've already wanted me to document the instructions that I do have. Why are you going to make me document ones that I don't have? Well, unfortunately, it's probably more important, arguably, that these are documented. Certainly as important, for a couple of reasons. One, you certainly don't want to introduce quality errors in the work that you're doing. You're already in a business continuity incident. People are possibly already stressed. People are maybe not paying as much attention as they could have because they're a bit harassed. You don't want to compound the difficulty of your business continuity response within dealing with mistakes on top. Also, people will be less familiar with this way of working because it is by definition not the normal way of working. So they're going to need even more support. So you absolutely will want contingency work instructions if they're going to have to work differently. People sometimes have said to me, what's the point in this? It's obvious what you would do. Business continuity plans in general, that is. And I think that there are two reasons why it is really important. One is that it is not necessarily obvious to everybody in the business just because it's obvious to you. What you might think are the really, anybody would do this steps. Not everybody will. Some people will panic. So don't assume it's obvious is the first thing. And then secondly, people will be stressed in this scenario. People react differently to this sort of crisis. Some people take it in their stride, others can really get in a flap about it. So you want to make it as easy for them to do their work, and you certainly don't want to lose time on panicking, strategizing, thinking, even discussing. Should we do this or should we do that? Oh, I'm going to check with this person. You just don't have the time. So have it all documented and people can follow it. And trust me, you would much prefer to have a plan, a brilliant plan that people instinctively follow and it's a piece of cake, than to assume it's all going to be great and then end up in an even bigger mess than you could have been. There are only two opportunities for you to think about how you would react in a business continuity event. There is before, if you choose to plan it, or there is during, if you haven't chosen to plan it. Definitely choose before. While this is going on, you're going to want to try to get things back to normal. And that is where the disaster recovery plan comes in. So remember, business continuity, how do we keep doing our critical tasks, our mission and time critical tasks during this period of disruption where this thing isn't available? Recovery, disaster recovery is let's get that thing available. Get the system back online, get it back into the office, whatever it is. So your disaster recovery plan should list the criticality of each resource covered in the plan. And this will mirror your business impact analysis. You're also going to want the mirror status. So if you're not familiar with that, there are essentially three options. A hot site is if you are running a system, you may have an identical version of that system running in parallel that you can just switch over to within about 5 seconds. It's got exactly the same information. Nothing is lost within the last few seconds. It's obviously the most efficient in a business continuity incident. However, by far the most expensive. You can have a warm site where the structure is there but the data isn't and you need to load it in. Or you could have a cold site, which is simply you have the ability to spin this up if you wanted to. This kind of comes from data centers. If you have your own data centers or servers, then this would be equivalent. A hot site being servers running with duplicated information, a warm site being servers are there, but they're not up and running, or the data center's not up and running. And cold site is basically the building has exploded. You have somewhere that you can put new servers, but you don't have the servers or the data as yet. Cold site, by far the cheapest and better than no site, but it will take you the longest time to recover. Warm site, as you would expect, somewhere in the middle. Warm site can be good if it's a very administrative thing where you need to be online fairly fast, but you don't need necessarily all of the historical data straight away. you can sort of carry on and worry about that later. The other things you're going to want are your staffing priority groups, and this applies regardless of whether you have this happening in-house or whether you've maybe got suppliers or IT companies that do this for you. If they need to go around everybody individually to reboot their machine after a virus is gone rampant or something, then you're probably not going to want them to do it alphabetically. So what's your priority groups? Is it going to be this department and that department? Is it going to be heads of in each department and everybody else? Is it going to be 50% of everybody, 20% of that department, 50% of that department, then everybody else? Have that thinking done in advance. Similar principle with requisition of equipment. If you just don't have enough to go around, can you take equipment from a service? Maybe you've got servers running that you can requisition as an operational machine. Maybe you've got people who you can stand down and reuse their equipment for recovery. If you're doing in-house, if you've got an IT department and you look after some of this stuff yourself, then you're going to want technical runbooks, which are the work instructions for how to fix the technology, and those recovery time and recovery point objectives. If not, if you are relying a lot more on suppliers to give you access to systems, then you want to have their recovery time and point objectives and their business continuity detail. You wouldn't have their whole plan, or sorry, their disaster recovery plan, but you'd want to know their approach. If you say, I can't live without this for more than a day and I want it back in 3 hours, and then you phone them up and say it's not working. If they say, yeah, we worked to a target of 7 days, that's a catastrophe. And the worst time to learn this is when it's down. So do the work in advance. If you rely on some key suppliers for those systems, then there's a questionnaire I can give you. You're welcome to it, and it will help you capture. And they should expect this. It's normal business practice. Capture the key information that you can then feed into your planning. And then lastly is your information recovery. So once you're back online, things are back to normal. If you've had to do some work on a spreadsheet in the background, who is going to be responsible for keying that into the system? Who's going to do it? When are they going to do it? And then once the dust is settled, we want to review the incident. Get a group of stakeholders. If it's affected multiple departments, maybe somebody from each department, and ideally have this within a week of the event having happened. If you've got a business continuity officer in the business, a designated person, they would share it. Otherwise, somebody that you appoint. And you just hit a few small, well, I say small, there's a few points. It's not a very complex agenda, but they're crucial. So the first and most important thing is your business continuity plan is intended to help you continue to do your mission critical, time critical stuff during the incident. Could you do it? If yes, that's a win for the business continuity plan. If no, then we need some serious work. Did you achieve your recovery time and point objectives, if that's applicable? Are you going to change your business impact analysis? Maybe you've learned that this was far more important than you anticipated it might be. And then suggested adjustments from the group to the existing plan and suggested new contingency arrangements. And as you would in any sort of meeting like this, important to log those actions, put them somewhere, write them down with an owner and a due date, make sure they're captured so we are accountable and get them done, and then circulate the meeting minutes accordingly as you would normally. So those are our main steps. We've analysed to figure out what's important. We've planned what we would do. We've weathered the storm when it happens. We've recovered as best we can, and we've reviewed for lessons learned. The last bit here is rehearsal. Extra incidents just for fun. Not really, actually really important. So I said there was only really one time to think, 2 times to think about what your plan would be. There's also only ever 2 times to discover whether your plan works, and that is before in a rehearsal or during. And again, the smart money's on before. So before you even get into rehearsals, training. Every time somebody new joins the business, as part of their induction, what is the business continuity plan? Make sure they know about your business continuity approach when you do your onboarding. It's worth doing annual refreshers for everybody so they know the key details, and certainly emergency evacuation drills, you would be doing them anyway, fire drills and other safety related drills that might be relevant to your business. And then simulated rehearsals. There's two reasons you want to do a rehearsal of your business continuity plan. First, to exercise the plan to make sure it works and that the things that you think are going to work do, and also rehearse the people so that people who have roles or responsibilities within the plan are confident and know what to do. And there's different approaches you can take depending on your appetite. One of the things is a call tree test, which isn't really a business continuity drill. It's more, if we are doing the phone call route, you phone whoever you're supposed to phone, get them to phone whoever they're supposed to phone, make sure the message passes through, all the phone numbers are up to date, no one's changed their mobile number and you didn't know, just keep that all accurate. But then the tests of the actual plan, the least intrusive is the desk check test. You would then just have a chat, sort of look at the paperwork, does this plan still make sense? Any comment, any feedback, any thoughts? You could do a walkthrough test, which is take me through the steps, show me how you would get that back up, show me how you would work on this, show me how you would do that. And then we get into full simulation. There's two options for that. One is one that you share with everybody in advance. So you say, tomorrow we're going to do a business continuity drill, we're going to make this resource unavailable at this time, we're going to work under business continuity arrangements, and we're going to see what happens. The advantage of that is it means if there is urgent, time-sensitive, critical work, people know this is going to happen, they can plan a little bit smart and just not add additional risk by dealing with those. The other way to do it is not to tell people and just switch it off, kill access and say this is now a business continuity drill. That has the added benefit of people need to react straight away as they would. Obviously, this is, I'm sure, apparent, but if you are doing a drill and it's not working and it looks like you are actually in danger of causing a real incident, abandon the drill. Do not introduce damage to your business unnecessarily. If you need to abandon the drill, you declare the test abandoned, you revert to normal working arrangements, have your post-incident review, ask your stakeholders, why did this not work? Adjust your plan and do another drill. So then in summary, just to go over what we've chatted about, some of the challenges that we're facing, multiple concurrent threats, blackouts, recession, COVID, we could list loads of them. The solution is to focus on your resources. What do you actually need, and establish a plan for if that becomes unavailable. The ability of staff to make good judgments under pressure, you can counter that with having clear procedures and defined roles and responsibilities. If you're relying on third parties or you've got critical software that's really vital, then work with your vendors, get these questionnaires done, explore your fallback options, have a plan in your back pocket. And as always with compliance, if you are just thinking this is too complicated, too irrelevant, masses of paperwork, don't let it be. Refine it, personalise it, make sure everything you've got adds value. There is nobody alive on this planet who has any interest or anything to gain from you having paperwork that you don't use, you don't need, you're never going to look at. So make sure that the way you approach it makes sense. Trim the fat, make it focused. And if you want some assistance with that, then that is the kind of stuff that we love to do. So please chat to us. We're more than happy to help you with any of it. All right, we've got a couple of minutes and there's just a few questions here. First question, can we use business continuity arrangements to look into cash flow? You could. It's probably not the best answer, to be honest. So if you are in a cash flow deficit and you're worried about money, there are probably one or two reasons for that. It's either going to be strategy, so you can't sell enough of what you do to make a profit, or your operating costs are too high, in which case you're better looking at your strategy to figure out how you can make this work, how you can make it viable. Or it's process. Maybe you are selling plenty, but your outlays are significant and your credit control is not keeping pace. So then look at your processes. So I would say strategy or process. Having said that, we are going into a recession. You may have a short-term shock which affects your cash flow. You could treat that as a business continuity incident if you used the principles. So what is the minimum cash that you need in the business to get through a month? And if you dip below that, then what are your priorities? They're going to be paying your staff salaries and your critical suppliers. What are your non-critical suppliers? And what are you going, do you have reserves? How and when can you access the reserves? Do you want to do that to cover day-to-day spending? What's the possible implication on your credit rating? All these sorts of things. So you could use these principles, although only if it was a short-term emergency situation you had to navigate. In the long term, no business continuity plan will stop you from running out of cash. Should we have one business continuity plan document or multiple? Good question, thanks very much. Either is the answer. It depends what works for you. If you are a small business, potentially with one or two key people who would be responsible for any business continuity incident, one document is maybe easier. If you are larger, or maybe the heads of would all take responsibility for business continuity in their remit, you might want them to have a document of plans that fall under their purview. So really the answer is whatever works best for you. You would probably want to, if you're updating the document so much that it becomes ridiculous because there's a new update from a different unrelated person every day, split it up. But if you are fairly centralized, have one. So I don't know if that helps or not, but the answer is it doesn't matter. Do what's right for you. And then last question, how many copies should we have of the business continuity plan? I think you must be referring to paper copies. Again, that depends. Decide who is key. Certainly anybody who would be responsible for responding to a business continuity incident. You need not have every member of staff have it, certainly, because your business continuity incident coordinator can share, this is what we're going to do, this is down, and this is the plan. If you are working in the office, I would recommend that you have a copy in the office at all times, and if you are working hybrid, that you have it in the homes of relevant members of your management team as well. Even if you are fully working in the office, I would still recommend that you have it in the homes, because you might find that the office burns down overnight. Hopefully it won't, but if it does, you want to have that plan. So I would say in the office and at the homes of anybody who might need to take responsibility during an incident. Okay, we are just about out of time. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope you found this helpful. If you have any more questions, the details are on the screen. You are more than welcome to get in touch with me, and I'm more than happy to help out with anything. If you want a business continuity plan, you want some tips, you want some more guidance, this is the kind of thing that we really love to do. I would be really delighted to help you with yours, so don't hesitate to just ping me a note and we can chat about it. But otherwise, thank you one more time. Enjoy the rest of your day. Speak to you later. Bye-bye.